Morning, everybody. I'm the Reverend Jim Foti, and it's my honor to welcome you to United on this Sunday, October 30th. As most of you know, I'm serving as United Sabbatical Minister through November 20th. And as some of you may have heard, the Reverend David Kramer met one of his sabbatical goals yesterday. He finished 174 miles of walking on the Camino de Santiago Pilgrim Trail in northern Spain. He sent a picture of his smiling face and no pictures of his feet, so we'll have to ask how he's doing. I imagine he's probably sitting around today, hopefully getting some rest. But he looked very happy, didn't he? This week, our worship team includes Emma, Alex, and Aaron, and also Lily will be joining us to do the story. So last minute sub in there. Thank you. That's great. We want to extend a special welcome to those of you watching online and remind everyone that if you miss a Sunday, like last week's fantastic music service, you can get caught up via the videos on the YouTube page. So I recommend the music service. I watched it last week for Minneapolis. It was toe tapping fun. So a few quick announcements. Maybe more than a few. I got an extra one here. Let's see here. The pancake brunch is coming up on November 27th. There will be a simple meal of pancakes, fruit, coffee, and juice. We will need pancake makers and one more griddle. A sign-up sheet will be downstairs after the service, or see Kay. Who's Kay? Is Kay here? There's Kay. Okay, if you need to, there you go. The anti-racism change team will not be meeting due to the election. If you have some potting soil to dispose of, please see Susan or Paul Bergman. I have questions about what they're burying. I don't know what they're up to, but interesting. Also from Paul and Susan, they will be gone for a month, and as you may know, they do a lot for our building and grounds. So the building and grounds team will need some help cleaning the church while they're gone. If you aren't able to join on Fridays, they have a sign-up sheet in the fellowship hall. Some of the jobs only take 10 or 15 minutes and can be done at your convenience. Any help would be much appreciated. Please talk to Susan or Paul if you can help. Are they up here? Susan and Paul, are you out there somewhere? They're there. They're in the back. That's Susan. There's Susan and Paul. Okay. And then later this week, we have Healing Spring Sangha, Threads United, and the Buddhist Study Group. Details on these and other events are included in United's emails. If you aren't getting the emails but you want to, go to the website and sign up. Also, a reminder, we have childcare today. Is that correct? I always want to double check before I say that. Lily says yes. Great. And a special welcome to our visitors and guests. If you're new around here, like me, we would be grateful to meet you and happy to answer your questions. So I hope everyone will join us downstairs for coffee after the service. Please center yourself for worship, and we're going to hear some words from Emma.
The poem I'm going to share today, it came in my email inbox earlier this week. It was in a newsletter about embodiment, and the newsletter was talking all about calling in all parts of ourselves, from the dark parts to the joyful parts, so that we might show up more fully in our lives. So as I read this, I invite you to invite in a part of yourself that might feel dark or broken or scary, and see if you can invite it to sit next to you as I read this poem. It's called A Party for the Broken by Tom Hirons. Tonight we will have a party only for the broken pieces, only for the crooked and the blunt ones. The shattered and the stained can come, but you perfected ones should stay away. All the orphans and exiles will be arriving soon with their bundles of rage and sorrow. Make room, you bright angels. Now the wounded are coming home. Tonight will be a celebration of our tragedies, our petty stupidities, our shameful transgressions, the unedifying failure to become what we might have been in other more radiant lives. Here are the unrelinquished griefs and the never forgiven slights. Here is the stuttering clumsiness and all the stagnant laziness. Here is the hollow in my heart. Come in, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Outside, the Buddhas and the saints are laughing. In here, there is a quieter communion of our tragedies. Sit. There is food and cheap wine, a warm fire and candles. Eat, drink, then speak, and we will all weep sticky and graceless tears. At this party, we are dancing to the tune of 10,000 folk songs, each one of imperfection and darkly holy for it. This is a party for the broken. Imperfect music plays for imperfect dancers. Imperfect speeches are imperfectly spoken. We bang tables and forget our words and wash the floor with our tears. You shattered and stained beauties, all crooked and graceless as you are, blunted by the hard world of death, love, and the push of time's spear. This is the secret I want to tell you. Our dark-tongued singing reaches heavens even the saints don't know. Our graceless, defiant dancing opens up the whole universe. The broken world is our country. The struggle is our homeland. Tonight, let the Buddhas be silent. In here, we will raise our glasses to our brokenness, howl and sing so loud and badly that all the bright and dark heavens will hear our song.
Each Sunday, we light the flame of our chalice, which is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Please join me in saying these words on the screen. May this flame kindle within us Thank you. We'll now take a moment to greet one another, say hello to people you know, and introduce yourself to people you don't.
Reasons why in our lives the answers show, and by our love all are born and all shall die. Life's the time left in between to follow a star and build a dream. Touch the earth and reach the sky. Hug the laughter, feel the cry. May we see where we can give, for this is what is meant to live. Touch the earth and reach the sky. Soar courage ever high. Spirits joining as we fly to touch the earth and reach the sky.
All right, excellent. All right, we've got our time for all ages now. And Lily is our understudy reader here, so this is great. Thank you for taking this on. Actually, if you stand over here, could you stand over here, then they can see the screen better. Yeah.
Probably get blinded. No.
Horse glasses. Tell me about it. So the story for all ages is Ghost Wings. I remember the day the butterflies left. They were the color of the sun setting on the mountains. They filled the trees with gold. So many they made in Bow's Bend. When they flew away, the wings rustled like skirts. That was the day my grandmother died. Grandmother was my best friend. When we made tortillas, we sang our favorite songs. Grandmother worked the dough on a big, matate, pushing and mashing till it didn't have any lumps. I had a little matate right next to hers. When the tortillas were ready, we cooked them side by side. At night, Mama tucked me into bed, but I heard monsters slither on the floor. They snapped their teeth and hissed my name. I pulled the covers to my chin, but still the monsters slithered and snapped. I cried out to Papa. He said, "You must be brave." I called to Mama. She said, "Nonsense. There are no monsters." But Grandmother leaned her broom against my bed and laid beside me, smelling the cornmeal and roses. "If the monsters dare to come," she said, "I'll chase them away with my broom." With Grandmother next to me, no monsters snapped their teeth, and none of them hissed my name. In winter, Grandmother and I loved to visit the magic circle. We sat on the forest floor and left the butterflies cover us with gold. We left them fan their wings on our shoulders and tickle our arms with their legs. One spring, Grandmother became thin as smoke. She didn't make tortillas. She was too tired. She said, "It's almost time for the butterflies to leave. Come with me to the magic circle and we'll say goodbye." It was a cloudy day and the butterflies clung to the trees. Their wings were closed and they were still as stone. One butterfly lay on the forest floor. I picked him up and blew warm breath on him. He shook his wings and flew away. "Close your eyes," Grandmother said. "Do you still feel the butterfly?" I nodded. My arms still trickled. "That's because they carry the souls of the old ones, and the old ones never really leave." Then the sun came out. The butterflies rose in a whoosh. They filled the sky with gold. In a few weeks, all the butterflies were gone. The magic circle was empty. That was the day Grandmother died. Papa took me to the magic circle, and we cried together. He said, "You love someone. They never really leave." But the butterflies were gone. He said the butterflies would come back, and they always came back. But my arm didn't feel the tickle anymore. That night, the monsters crouched beneath my bed and hissed my name. I trembled in my bed alone. I wanted Grandmother. I leaned her broom against my bed and pressed my nose into her pillow. At first, I could smell cornmeal and roses, but after a while, even the smell was gone. There was no one between me and the monsters. The time of the roses passed and became the time of the marigolds. This was a reason for Days of the Dead, the time to remember the old ones. At the market, we bought candles and pan de los muertos. Yeah. with sugar bones on top. Mama chose a bag of oranges, and when I smelled them, they made my nose prickle. I bought a little skull made of chocolate and sugar. After lunch, Papa set up an ofrenda. On it, Mama put candles, oranges, and grandmother's picture. I leaned her broom against the altar and spread rose petals and cornmeal on top. When the day was almost gone, the light became thin as smoke. Mama lit the candles, and their flames shook the shadows from the room. Papa said mother too, but she seems far away. All night the candles flickered on the ofrenda. I smelled roses and cornmeal as I went to sleep. In the morning, we walked to the cemetery. All the neighbors were there. We cleaned up the graves of the old ones. I spread flowers over grandmother's grave and ate my chocolate and sugar skull. The neighbors filled the cemetery with picnic baskets and flowers, stories and noise. One man sang grandmother's favorite song. There was a tiny flicker in the sky. It was a butterfly. Soon the tombs and crosses were covered with flickering gold. One of the butterflies landed on my arm. It fanned the sun with its wings and tickled my arm with its legs. I said, I remember that grandmother was brave. She chased monsters with her broom. I remember how she smelled like cornmeal and roses. She sang songs and made tortillas when she took me to the magic circle. It was full of magic. The butterfly shook its wings and flew away. I closed my eyes. I could still feel the tickle. In my head, I heard grandmother's song. I smelled roses and cornmeal. Now I remember grandmother. And that's the time for all ages.
Way to jump into a multilingual time for all ages story at the last minute. Lily, thank you so much. We're gonna sing people out to their classes now.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Memorization test there. That slide got eaten as I was doing this. We're going to slow down for a moment of meditation and prayer. We'll take a moment of pause in this busy and dizzying world, and we're going to hear these words from the poet Robert Weston. Autumn, we know, is life en route to death. The asters are but symbols of frost. The trees flaunting their colors at the sky. And other times will follow where the leaves have fallen, and so shall we. Yet other lives will come, so we may know, accept, embrace the mystery of life we hold a while. Nor mourn that it outgrows each separate self, but still rejoice that we may have our day. Lift high our colors to the sky, and give in our time fresh glory to the earth.
Each week in our congregation, we take up an offering. We pass the plate during worship to make a community expression of thanks for the blessings of abundance in our lives. Our offering reminds us that the act of giving is essential to our spiritual well-being and a key part of being a covenantal community. The morning offering will now be received.
Each week, we build our sense of community by sharing milestones in our individual lives, those joys and sorrows that make up who we are. If you have something to share, please come to the microphone on the floor here. Tell us your name and what's on your mind. Take a stone from the bowl as you do so, and when you're finished, place the stone in the bowl with water and let the ripples carry your concerns out to the wider community.
Before anybody gets up, two joys and two sorrows that I'd like to share. It's been an emotional roller coaster of a couple weeks. So I'll start with some good news. I'll go in chronological order. So a week ago from this past Wednesday, my wife Taryn officially had her ceremony at USCIS downtown to become a full-fledged American citizen. After it's been about a 5-year process between the from visa to green card to application and waiting time and all of that. So it's been a long process, and so it was nice to get that completed. And some of you might have heard about this in the news with what's been going on at Franklin School District the last week and a half or so. But on the following day, on Thursday, we had a what's called a swatting event, where someone calls in a fake active shooter situation, like a hoax, but in that kind of situation, everyone very much thinks that it's real at first, because you have to kind of act like it is until you can prove that it's not. So we had that happen on the following morning, scary couple hours at the high school, and then that evening we had our first choir concert of the year, which was a wonderful, wonderful event, and one of my proudest moments as a teacher, which is my second joy in this progression, because the other choir director's out on maternity leave right now, and I'm doing all 6 to 12 choirs on my own. So it was a really proud moment for me as a teacher to see that all come together. And then the following Monday at the middle school, we had another event of what happened at the high school, another fake situation called in where students had to barricade in classrooms and then evacuate the school and go to the safe haven location and go through that whole progression, which was difficult to see, especially for the middle schoolers. So it's been ups and downs. So I'm trying to stay even-keeled with those highs and lows going on. But some calm waters for a while would be nice. I'm gonna go put a stone in the bowl.
Good morning, I'm Marcia. Whoops. Good morning, I'm Marcia. I just wanted to share a great joy. Our daughter Noelle is as of last Saturday, is engaged to be married. And we're really, really happy. He's really, as he said, a perfect match for each other. So.
I'm Paula. I have two joys. First is we finally got Ladies' Night Out off the ground again, and we're hoping to meet once a month. Men are certainly welcome to come if they'd like. I don't want to be exclusive, but it's just a nice time to get out, and people get to know each other, have a chance to get to know each other a little better, and that's basically the purpose of it. So we're doing that again in November. And the second joy is that yesterday we got to cash in on a former auction offering. Ellen took Sandy and Stuart and I to the Black Holocaust Museum, and it was late in happening because the museum was closed for a long time. But I would highly recommend a trip there. It's very interesting and well done. And then we went to Daddy's Soul Food for soul food afterwards, and we met Benny, the owner. He said, "I'm Daddy," in the parking lot, and he took us in, and we had a great time. The food was really good, and really good soul food. So I recommend that too.
I'm Stuart. Paul and I won't be here next Sunday, and that's because Next week, I'm going down into the Chicago area. All of my siblings, my mom's grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren, and some of her cousins from Canada will be coming in to celebrate her 100th birthday, which is actually today.
Hi, I'm Chet, and the duct tape is for... Okay. Not sure. So, I'm actually celebrating a joy with a sorrow. It's a strange world I live in, because things happen to me, and then I sit in the morning before I start my day, and I stare out the window, and I can go down that dark path of thought, And so this morning was not unlike that, because we had some events. We had a friend of ours who lost a friend of mine, one of my old students, who's lost her mother too soon, and so we had a party for her yesterday, a celebration of life, which is what she wanted, and we played some music and got to see everybody, and then we're troubled about some other things in our lifestyle, and I were sitting around in the morning talking back and forth about these dark things that kind of keep coming in, and then all of a sudden I come to church and I get the poem from Emma, and I'm like, oh, how poignant, and then the song, and then the people. It's strange how I get every time I come here, I get a remedy for what I'm dealing with. Like, it was so specific. I mean, and Silent Eyes with the elbows, like up, sit next to each other, like, yeah. So that's my the sorrows were enough to bring me into that dark place, and I took it all and put it on the couch when Emma was giving that speech or that poem, and I'm sitting right next to all this darkness, and I'm going, yeah, we need to have a nice little evening together and cure that. So that's my joy and my sorrow.
Hi, I'm Michael. I just wanted to let everybody know that I've already gotten 43 winter coats for people. I put the barrels out about a week and a half ago, and I went to look at them 2 days ago, and they were all full. One of them was overflowing. So I was pretty excited. Usually I get about 10 coats. There is a coat barrel here right out under the coat rack if anybody has any coats, boots, mittens, scarves, hats. I'm collecting all those things, and I give them to the Hope Center. The other joy was that we missed singing happy birthday to Mike Revis, who was 76, the 20th of October, so it was Mike's birthday.
I'll put in one more stone for all those unspoken joys and sorrows that live in our hearts. And what church can't fix, duct tape can, right? Please join in singing our refrain.
Walking with you, walking with you is our prayer.
I'm going to share one of Jim's favorite poems now. It's called My Dead Friends by Marie Ho. I have begun, when I'm weary and can't decide an answer to a bewildering question, to ask my dead friends for their opinion. And the answer is often immediate and clear. Should I take the job, move to the city? Should I try to conceive a child in my middle age? They stand in unison, shaking their heads and smiling. Whatever leads to joy, they always answer, to more life and less worry. I look into the vase where Billy's ashes were. It's green in there, a green vase, and I ask Billy if I should return the difficult phone call, and he says yes. Billy's already gone through the frightening door. Whatever he says, I'll do.
When I was a young adult, I had the good fortune to be invited to visit Egypt. I had a friend living in Cairo, and when he said, "Come on over," I thought to myself, life is short. When will I ever again have a free place to stay in Egypt? 30 years later, I can tell you the answer to that question is never. So I'm extra grateful that I was able to make the trip. While I was there, I got to see the things that Egypt is famous for, like pyramids and mummies. Interesting to me that Egypt is most famous in some ways for the ways it honored its dead. My friend also took me to see less well-known sites. And one of those lesser-known sites that made an impression on me was essentially a triple-decker religious layer cake made of stone. The building had started off as a structure that had been built by either ancient Romans or ancient Egyptians. I can't remember. Then Christianity came along, and the Christians built a church on top of it. And then eventually a mosque was fabricated on top of that, all in the same spot. It was quite something, constructed over centuries in a mishmash of styles with a mix of materials and belief systems. There are buildings like this in locations around the world, and many of these holy places still have a function today. That religious layer cake made of stone came to mind this past week as I was looking ahead at our modern calendar. That's because these next few days have a pileup of autumnal holidays of widely varying origins. Tomorrow we've got Halloween all day, with the ancient Gaelic festival of Samhain starting in the evening and running into Tuesday. Tuesday is the Christian holiday of All Saints' Day, followed the next day by All Souls' Day. You do not have to be an official saint to be celebrated on November 2nd. You do to make the cut for November 1st. These all overlap with Day of the Dead, a Mexican tradition with indigenous roots, and we heard the beautiful story read by Lily. I wanted to mention that the author of that story, I think her name is Barbara Josie, lives in Wisconsin. She lives in Port Washington, so a local tie. All these holidays are interrelated and cross-pollinated, and they're a mishmash of styles and belief systems in a way that may not be unfamiliar to Unitarian Universalists. And these holidays come at a time of year when endings come to mind. The ending of the growing season, the ending of green grass, the ending of leaves on the trees. It's a time for much of the natural and agrarian world to rest, and it's a good time for us to reflect on what is gone and who has gone before us. Samhain is one of what are known as the cross-quarter holidays, festivals that occur about halfway between an equinox and a solstice. Groundhog and May Day, two modern holidays with pagan elements, sit in similar spots on the wheel of the year. There's another cross-quarter holiday in early August called Lammas, which marks the first harvest, while Samhain marks the harvest's end and the entering into the darker months of the year. The earliest celebrants of Samhain believed that the boundaries between this world and the afterlife were especially thin this time of year, and so offerings of food and drink were sometimes made to the dead. And although Samhain is known for some of its playful elements, it has served as an important and serious time to remember and to celebrate and to prepare for the more challenging months ahead. And very much like that Christian church in Egypt that was built on top of something ancient, Christian holidays have landed, not very coincidentally, on top of older pagan holidays. Scholars aren't 100% in agreement on some of this, but Christmas, with its extremely pagan trees, takes place only a few days after the winter solstice. The Christian holiday of Easter is named after Ostara, an ancient pagan word for the spring solstice. And there is some thinking that All Saints' Day, after moving around in the early centuries of the church, was plopped on top of Samhain to make conversions easier, and so that Christianity wouldn't be left out of the celebrations that were already going on in parts of the British Isles and elsewhere. "If you can't beat the pagans, join them," is a fine motto. And human creativity and adaptability have taken care of the rest. Halloween, which means All Hallows' Eve, the evening before All Saints' Day, acquired the later Gaelic habits of dressing up and going door to door. Day of the Dead includes storytelling and offerings of food for departed loved ones, an echo of Samhain and of other traditions of leaving food for the dead, as in Egyptian tombs. There is a beautiful and diverse tapestry of human responses to changing seasons and to losses and to the need to remember. When I consider all these responses to the universally human ideas of change and grief, I like to hold them up next to the more modern attitudes. These older and newer approaches to memory and meaning sometimes seem contradictory and sometimes seem complementary, and they offer lessons all around. And so in this season of remembering those who have gone before, I'd like to share a personal story of a loss I experienced and what it taught me about ritual and remembrance. I share this story in the hope of offering something that may resonate with a parallel in your own life. The story I want to share is about my friend Dale. Dale was one of my two best friends from college. We met at UW-Madison when we were undergrads. Dale and I went through our coming out years together, we went on trips together, and we listened to each other's many stories of dates and boyfriends gone awry. When I'd go back to Madison to visit after graduation, I'd crash at his apartment or meet up with him for dinner. To my great delight, Dale eventually moved to the Twin Cities, where our friendship was able to continue in a wonderful, new, and more regular way. Dale was smart, supportive, very funny, and a great cook. Everything you might want in a lifelong friend. In March of 2004, just 6 months after he'd gotten married, Dale got out of bed at home early one Saturday morning. He had been up and about for only a few minutes when he had a massive heart attack. He died almost instantly. He was 36 years old, which seemed very young at the time and seems even younger to me now. Dale's death was a shock to everyone who knew him. A couple of hundred people attended the visitation and memorial service, which were held a few days after he died. His family flew in from the East Coast, his husband's parents flew in from the South, and mutual friends of ours from college came in from all over. Memories and stories and tears were shared. It was an important and sacred time of the kind that human beings have always held to mourn people they love. And I missed it. I missed the whole thing. I missed Dale's death and the entire week after. The morning that Dale had died, I had gotten on a plane to go to Mexico to spend a week with my family and attend my sister's wedding. This was back before Facebook and iPhones and Gmail, way before memorial services were streamed online. I was simply not reachable. I had no idea what happened. I arrived home at the end of the week, late at night, and I remember standing in my apartment in disbelief listening to the messages on my answering machine. Dear wonderful Dale, who I'd just had dinner with the week before, was just gone. And everyone else had already said goodbye. As you can imagine, this greatly confounded my grieving process. Rituals and traditions around death serve many purposes. They create communities of memory and safe vessels for emotion. They're a chance for us to bear witness and to be witnessed. They're a place to grieve in ways consistent with our deepest beliefs and values. Rituals also provide a path, a familiar course of action, a to-do list at a time when it can be hard to think clearly or at all. When the narrative you're living changes dramatically, and when a companion's storyline comes to a sudden end, there can be some small reassurance of being able to pick up a semblance of a script, so that for at least a few days, you know what happens next. And I will insert my ministerial opinion here, that if you know someone who says, do not have any kind of memorial gathering, listen to their reasons and do what you need to do. In my situation, Dale was simply and unceremoniously gone, so I had to find my own way. I had dinner with his husband, a widower at 30. I talked to mutual friends. I sent a card to his family, who I'd stayed with in the past. There wasn't much in the way of social media back then, so there was no caring bridge to post on or Facebook for sharing condolences. The emotions of my grief were actually not that complicated. Dale and I had been on good terms, and with no unresolved issues, we were in regular contact. I was just very sad and traveling through a very strange void. And I really didn't do much with the loss. I wasn't a minister at that time, nor was I even attending church, so I had no clergy to consult. I didn't take part in any rituals or support groups or memory making. I even trivialized my own loss, figuring that I wasn't Dale's spouse or parent or sibling, I was just a friend. How sad should I allow myself to be? I was a good American employee who went back to work as scheduled. But as time and years went on, I learned quite a lot about grief and remembering. And one of the things I learned is that there is this idea in our mainstream American white-dominated culture that grief gets in the way of life, that it's some separate event or separate process or a detour rather than part of life itself. There is much pressure from within and from without for people living with grief to put on a happy face and to do so quickly. This opportunity to both feel bad and then feel like a failure for feeling bad is reinforced by the culture around us. In reality, grief is kind of like its own wild creature, one that may ignore the fences and corrals that we try to put around it. But instead of accepting grief's unpredictable ways, there's often a temptation, a pressure to industrialize grief as a process. And as a result, some of the questions people tend to ask themselves about grief are questions like these. How can I do this exactly right? What are the steps? How long does each step take? If I do this, this, and this, can I stop grieving by this date? Maybe the first anniversary plus 1 day. I've heard there's a stage of a grief called acceptance. What is the shortest route there? Right? Because I don't want to be sad. I don't want this pain. I don't like living this way, and I don't want to be this person. Right? This sounds familiar? I've asked these questions myself. A book that greatly influenced my personal thinking and my ministry around grief and remembering is called Bereavement Support Groups, Breathing Life into Stories of the Dead by Dr. Lorraine Hedke. She writes this: the dominant Western practice has been to expect the bereaved person to be efficient in their response to death. The bereaved are often given very short leave periods before being expected to return as a fully functional worker. The situational pressure is to accept, move on, and resume functioning. Although most bereaved people do continue to have moments of grief and despair that may last a lifetime, to acknowledge their longing beyond the initially sanctioned time is potentially stigmatizing. Hedke also says this: 1 year or 5 years later, or even longer, when a bereaved person misses or cries or longs for a loved one, they may be tempted to stifle the urge out of fear of being seen as a poor griever, that they should have completed their unfinished business with the person whose body died. I think she's right about the push toward efficient grief and how it denies our humanity. Imagine handing a grief schedule to the old celebrants of Samhain as they communed with their ancestors every year, or to families sharing warm memories on Day of the Dead. What is perhaps my greatest lesson about grief came from both Dr. Hedke and from my friend and UU ministerial colleague, the Reverend Kate Tucker. In one of Reverend Kate's meditations on grief, she says this: it helps to recognize that though your loved one dies, your relationship does not. It changes, it flows, it grows, it distills, it lives. Dr. Hedke's book carries a similar message, questioning the idea that a relationship ends when a person dies. She suggests that any of us might very well remain in a kind of relationship and even in a kind of conversation with those we love. Their influence does not go away with their physical presence. Hedke writes, this is not to suggest transcendental conversations or seances in which people speak to ghosts of the dead. Nor is it about a morbid prolonging of sad stories of loss and encouraging people to pine for what was. It is rather, she says, about finding ways in which the deceased person's stories, values, meanings, and connections to those they love can be folded into the lives of the living. In this way, the deceased continue to have a metaphorical voice that can be accessed and drawn upon. In the poem that Emma read for us earlier, Marie Howe underscores the idea that we can ask our dead friends for advice because we have an idea of what they would say. My friend Dale had been dead for several years when I first heard that poem, and over those years, I had found myself having many conversations with him. Not supernatural ones, but ones like the poet describes and ones like Dr. Hedke describes. I'd imagined Dale's calming presence, his thoughtfulness, his gentle voice, and I kind of knew what he would say. It wasn't as good as having the real Dale actually there, of course, but it was better for me than the harsh dichotomy of before and after. And it was a way of holding on to some of the gifts of that friendship. I've learned that many people do this, consciously or unconsciously, as we carry around the thoughts and influences of friends and relatives and mentors, those who have loved us into being who and where we are in our lives. And it's good to have some tools in your grief toolbox. It's good to have ways of managing memories. Because as this week's holidays remind us, grief and death are something we'll all face at any stage of life. When I was entering middle adulthood, around the time I was preparing to become a minister, I experienced the sudden deaths of 2 more friends. One of them, in fact, the friend who had invited me to Egypt. One of my mentors, the Reverend Jan Eller Isaacs, pointed out to me that grief can have a cumulative effect, that new losses can bring up earlier ones. And she noticed that I was still carrying some grief around my friend Dale. You should do something with that, she told me, and you should take someone with you. I sat with Jan's wisdom for a bit and reflected. And then I decided to make an overdue pilgrimage to Madison to meet up with my other best friend from college. She is smart, supportive, very funny, and a great cook. Everything you might want in a lifelong friend. She and I stood at the end of a pier on Lake Mendota under a scrim of high clouds, with leaves starting to bud on the trees along the shore. She read a poem that she had brought, and I read My Dead Friends. We sprinkled some water in the lake to symbolize the places that Dale had lived: New England, Madison, Minnesota. And we shared thoughts of gratitude for Dale's work for the broader world and for his presence in the lives of those who loved him. Our lakeside ritual was very simple, but this brief and sacred time made a difference. The grief I'd been carrying around for 8 years did not vanish, but it was lighter for having been held up and witnessed at last. As we close our worship time together this morning and head into these fall holidays that call us into places of memory and change, may each of us think of the stories we carry, of the people who have gone before, and treasure them in our hearts. Please rise as you are able, and we are going to sing together the hymn, Comfort Me.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Speak for me, speak with me, speak with me, oh my soul. Speak with me. Speak with me. Speak with me, oh my soul. Dance with me. Dance with me. Dance with me, oh my soul. Dance with me. Dance with me. Dance with me, oh my soul. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me.
I don't know where the closing words went. They're gone. So I will just say them. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the conversation, and we have a closing number.
Thought we'd go into the holiday having a little fun. Saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand, walking through the streets of Soho in the rain. He was looking for a place called Leho Fooks, going to get a big dish of beef chow mein. How werewolves of London. Werewolves of London. If you hear him howling around your kitchen door, you better not let him in. A little old lady got mutilated late last night. Werewolves of London again. How werewolves of London. How werewolves of London. How he's a hairy-handed gent who ran amok in Kent. Lately he's been overheard in Mayfair. You better stay away from him. He'll rip your lungs out, Jim. He'd like to meet his tailor. How werewolves of London. How werewolves of London. How I saw Lon Chaney walking with the Queen, doing the werewolves of London. I saw a werewolf drinking a pina colada at Trader Vic's. His hair was perfect. How werewolves of London. How werewolves of London. Drop that. How thank you. It'll rip your lungs out, Jim.